Well, that didn't go to plan.
This is awkward.
What is up, guys? This is Ben here, and I'm back with another video on the weekly picks for the NFL. It is probably safe to say that this is the year of the upset because, good lord, there was a ton of them this week as well. And before we get started with the week 6 picks, I have one more disclaimer. I was on vacation last week, so I couldn't upload my weekly picks and results video. But here's the recap. In week 4, I went 12-4 on my predictions. Not too bad, I would say. But for this past week, though, things didn't go as well. I ended up 6-8. Not my best, but not my worst. That brings my grand total for this season so far to 42-36. With that out of the way, let's get started with a Thursday game. San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks. The 49ers come to this game with a loss to the Arizona Cardinals. This win for the Cardinals snapped a 4-game losing streak to their divisional rival. This was honestly a very exciting game to watch and started off with a Kyle Murray run for 50 yards for a touchdown. But for a majority of the game, it looked like the 49ers had it made, being on top 23-10 at halftime. The 49ers offense was completely absent in the second half, struggling down the field, and the occasional turnover, specifically a fumble loss in the red zone by Jordan Mason, allowed the Cardinals to come back and win on a 35-yard field goal, winning 24-23. The Seahawks are also coming to this game with a 29-20 loss upset to the New York Giants. This game for the majority was a nail-biter. Although it started off crazy with a 102-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown by Reen Jenkins, Seattle took the lead early. But now it seems like Daniel Jones has found a surge in his career and is starting to play like a true quarterback. No offense, Giants fans. With a 30-yard touchdown to Darius Slayton and an added field goal, it led to a 20-13 lead. Seattle kept it close with some field goals, but they didn't capitalize on offense at all. Mistakes by a fumble by DK Metcalf is what limited the comeback chances in the final minutes. And let's not forget that controversial blocked field goal that was returned for a touchdown, sealing the game. For some reason, Thursday night games are some of the best games to watch this season. And I feel like it will be another nail-biter like last week was with Atlanta and Tampa Bay. Both teams have explosive players, but many flaws, injuries, and much more. But I'm going to give the edge to the Seahawks because of the home field advantage. Seahawks win 24-21. Jacksonville Jaguars and Chicago Bears. The Jacksonville Jaguars are traveling to London for the first of 2 games. They are coming off their first win of the season on Trevor Lawrence's birthday out of all days to my Indianapolis Colts. Without being biased, Trevor Lawrence did a really good job, thanks to a great crew of supporting cast, especially by Tank Bigsby, their running back, who secured 2 touchdowns. Indianapolis fought back, but it wasn't enough. Jacksonville sealed the deal on a game-winning field goal, securing their first win of the season. For the Chicago Bears, they're coming off of a win against the Carolina Panthers. And yes, it is the Panthers, I know. But this was a Caleb Williams that I don't think any of us have seen yet. He threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdown passes, both of them which to DJ Moore. Expect to see more connections with them. I was very impressed with the Chicago Bears. And if they all stay healthy, they're just going to get better and better. The defense also showed up, securing 4 sacks and 2 recovered fumbles. This matchup is going to be kind of interesting. You have a young, inexperienced team that is exceeding expectations. And then you have a team that just secured their first win when they should be better than their record. But I don't have the confidence to pick Jacksonville in this. Issues are all over the board. So I'm going to give the win to Chicago on this. Chicago wins this 24-14. Arizona Cardinals and Green Bay Packers. As mentioned earlier, the Arizona Cardinals are coming off a win against the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not saying they're the best team in their division, but they have a lot to back that up. Kyler Murray has been having a great season thus far, and with the acquisition of Marvin Harrison Jr. through the draft, this team is a big threat that should not go unnoticed. The Packers are coming off of a win against the LA Rams. It was Jordan Love's first game back since Week 1's injury in Brazil, and even though he had to shake off the cobwebs due to a pick 6, he was able to get back on track. But with the help of a touchdown from Josh Jacobs and 2 touchdowns from tight end Tucker Kraft, they secured their win 24-19. This is going to be an exciting NFC matchup. I see this as a high-scoring game, and likely the game of the week. Bold take, I know. It is extraordinarily difficult to win on the road in Lambeau Field, so I'm going to go with the Packers. The Packers win at 31-28. Indianapolis Colts and Tennessee Titans. The Colts are entering Week 6 to a loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which marks the 10th straight loss at Jacksonville for the team.
Traditions.
Trevor Lawrence had his best game of the season so far. Over 300 yards and multiple touchdown passes. The Colts defense allowed 37 points. For a team that entered that game winless, that is unacceptable. Defensive coordinator Gus Bradley might be clearing out his desk sooner than later, and as of recording this, he is still on the coaching staff, but I don't know for how long. The Colts also played last week without two of their most explosive players, Jonathan Taylor and quarterback Anthony Richardson. However, Joe Flacco played an impressive game, over 300 yards and 3 touchdown passes, and Alec Pierce, one heck of a game again. Jeez, that guy can run. The Titans are coming off of a bye week. Prior to that week, they had the Monday night game against the Miami Dolphins where they beat them 31-12 on the road. The highest scorer in that game was the kicker Nick Folk, who had 5 field goals. Quarterback Will Levis exited the game early due to a shoulder injury and was replaced by Mason Rudolph for the remainder. Coming into this game, both of the Week 1 starting quarterbacks are questionable, one with a shoulder injury and one with an oblique injury. With some other questionable injuries on both teams, I am going to give the Colts the advantage here on the road. The offense for the Titans does not impress me, with the exception of Nick Folk. It may be a nail-biter because the Colts defense just doesn't seem to know how to catch a break, but I think it will come down to the offense. Indianapolis wins 27-16. Houston Texans and New England Patriots. The Houston Texans donned their new alternate uniforms for the first time against the Buffalo Bills last week. For a majority of the game, they were well in control, but then Buffalo showed up with a 17 unanswered point comeback, tying the game at 20-20. With a few seconds on the clock and a spectacular drive by CJ Stroud, the Texans got into field goal range, sealing the deal with a 23-20 win over the Buffalo Bills. One downside is that they lost star wide receiver Nico Collins to a hamstring injury. For the New England Patriots, it's not been fun for them at all, with issues on and off the field, and now a change in quarterback. Third overall pick Drake May will make his debut as a starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. Last week, New England played the Miami Dolphins in a 15-10 loss. A lackluster performance for both teams, but it was Miami who had the last laugh. I think it's safe to say that this game could be done before halftime. I have a gut feeling, though, that Houston is going to prevail, and no offense to Drake May, it's just the rest of the team as a whole. I'm going to go with Houston 30, New England 7. Tampa Bay Buccaneers and New Orleans Saints. If you missed last week's Thursday Night Football matchup between the Buccaneers and the Falcons, I feel very sorry for you. Both of these offenses were running on all cylinders, especially with the connection between Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans where they connected for 2 touchdown passes, a solid performance. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. With the game tied in regulation, the Falcons were the first and only team to have the ball on offense. The game finished with a 45-yard touchdown pass to seal the deal, 36-30, leaving Baker Mayfield on the sidelines. The Saints have gone in a tailspin ever since Week 3. The Saints have a 3-game losing streak right now, with their most recent loss on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. The game was quite of a snoozer. Derek Carr threw an interception on the first drive. The Chiefs capitalized on all the mistakes. The Saints did come back a little bit in the third quarter, and in the fourth quarter, Derek Carr exited the game and did not return, and what has been determined to be an oblique injury, in which he will miss multiple weeks. The only good or hopeful things to take away from this is that Alvin Kamara and Rashid Shaheed are just dominant. Great performance for both of them, but just wasn't enough. If I had to pick between one of these two teams, it's going to be the Buccaneers. They are an overall better team, both on offense and defense, and with the Saints' issue at quarterback, I can't really trust them to score many points. Buccaneers win this 24-14. Cleveland Browns and Philadelphia Eagles. The woes continue for the Cleveland Browns as they lose another one to the Washington Commanders. The Deshaun Watson experiment has been a disaster for the Cleveland Browns since the beginning. Without going into detail of his off-the-field affairs, his performance on the field has been nothing more but underwhelming. He does not play the same way as he did when he played for the Texans. And not to add insult to injury, but the Washington Commanders made the Cleveland Browns look like what they did back in 2004. It has been a rough season for Cleveland so far, and I don't even think that Nick Chubb's return is going to make much of a difference. For the Eagles, a bye week was just what they needed. Refresh, re-energize, and relax. Prior to the bye week, they embarrassed themselves on the road against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For this matchup, it's going to be a no-brainer for me. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles for the win. Look to see Saquon Barkley run over 115 yards on the Cleveland defense, and with multiple touchdowns. Eagles win this 31-10. Washington Commanders and Baltimore Ravens. The Washington Commanders are coming off of a win against the Cleveland Browns where they demolished them at home. It could be too early to tell, but I do feel like Jaden Daniels is likely going to be this year's Rookie of the Year. Washington took care of business, as usual, and they have really surprised me this whole season, only losing one game thus far this season. For the Baltimore Ravens, it was a nail-biter to the very end in overtime against the Cincinnati Bengals, where they won on the road 41-38. Lamar Jackson's way to get out of the pocket and be elusive is just incredible. You cannot describe that. Not to mention, too, Derrick Henry. I mean, he's a bulldozer. I'm not going to discredit the Bengals here. Joe Burrow had a phenomenal game as well with 5 touchdown passes, but that one interception is what really saved the Ravens from utter defeat. With Justin Tucker's long-range field goal kick that got them into overtime, I personally thought that the Ravens were done after Lamar Jackson fumbled the ball on their first drive in overtime. But after the miss of Evan McPherson, it was almost a matter of time. And on first down, where Derrick Henry ran a 51-yard rush, going above and beyond to make a chip shot for Justin Tucker to win the game. That was for sure the game of the week. This one's going to be a really tough one to pick. If I had to choose, stats would say Ravens, but give me the upset here. Go with the Washington Commanders here. It'll be a close game, but Washington will come on top. Washington wins 24-23. Los Angeles Chargers and Denver Broncos. The Chargers are coming off of a bye week, and prior to it, they had a matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs where they lost 10-17. There really wasn't much to say about that game. It was very forgettable. And with the injury bug hitting them left and right, it's going to be pretty difficult to watch these Chargers for the rest of the season. For the Denver Broncos, it was the Bo Nix show. He basically showed, "Hello NFL, I am here." This was his best performance of the season, throwing 2 touchdown passes, but not a lot of yardage, only 206. And the occasional 1-yard rushing touchdown where he launched himself over the offensive line. Stats are showing that the Chargers have an upper advantage with this, but I'm going to go with the Broncos here at home. Another divisional rival battle, and I think that the 3-game winning streak that Bo Nix has got is going to push to 4, so give me the Broncos here. Broncos are going to win it 24-13. Pittsburgh Steelers and Las Vegas Raiders. After a weather-delayed Sunday Night Football matchup, the Pittsburgh Steelers lose to the Dallas Cowboys in what was for sure one of the longest-lasting games ever. Being played in the Eastern Time Zone, the game started on a Sunday night, but it finished in a Monday morning. The turf was wet, but the game was dry. Unless you were a fan of defense, this was not the game for you. TJ Watt unsurprisingly made his 100th career sack, and the defense intercepted Dak Prescott twice. Despite the loss, Justin Fields still looked pretty solid out there being QB1. For the Raiders, the first drive looked good for them, and that was about it. Gardner Minshew connected with Brock Bowers for a 57-yard gain for a touchdown. But after that, it all kind of fell apart for them. Up against a hot Denver Broncos defense, it was interception after interception. The Raiders called damage control and put Aiden O'Connell in to replace Gardner Minshew, but the results showed the same. The Broncos overpowered and sailed by the Raiders with a 34-18 win. As of recording this, I'm not 100% if Gardner Minshew is going to be QB1 coming into this matchup, but don't be surprised if they change it and go to Aiden O'Connell. This is going to come down to the wire again, just like every other Pittsburgh game has this season. And I'm going to give them the nod to win this. Justin Fields can scramble, and he's got a load of weapons that he can use, such as Najee Harris, Freiermuth, and Pickens. Pittsburgh wins 21-14. Detroit Lions and Dallas Cowboys. The Detroit Lions are coming off of a bye week. Prior to that, they had a Monday night showdown against the Seattle Seahawks where they beat them 42-29. Jared Goff had statistically what would be a perfect game. 18 of 18 on passing and 292 yards for 2 touchdowns. The same can be said for Jahmyr Gibbs, who had 2 touchdowns that day. And the defense for the Lions is just absolutely dominant, with Aiden Hutchinson leading the pack. For the Cowboys, they're coming off of a win on Sunday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. It was not a pretty game by any means. Dak Prescott had 2 interceptions, but on the contrary, he did have 2 touchdown passes, one of which to his breakout running back Rico Dowdle. And with mishap after mishap between Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb not being on the same page, you can see that the chemistry between them is, for lack of a better term, somewhat shaky. Will this continue on throughout the season or even into the playoffs? Who knows? Even though this is being played in Jerry World, I am going to give the advantage to the Lions on this one. Their defense is healthy, unlike the Cowboys, and I think all their offensive weapons can be matched to the Cowboys, and if not, be better. Lions are going to take this home 30-20. Atlanta Falcons and Carolina Panthers. That Thursday night matchup should have just been called the Kirk Cousins show. 509 yards in passing and 4 touchdowns. an unbelievable performance. Two of his receivers, Darnell Mooney and Drake London, had over 100 yards each, with London a touchdown and Mooney 2 touchdowns. Although the game was tight and went into overtime, the Falcons still secured a win at home. The Carolina Panthers are just miserable. There's really nothing much else to say with them. The Andy Dalton project did not work, although don't tell Raiders fans that. It just goes to show with you, the one-hit wonder of Andy Dalton is finished. The Bears decimated the Panthers so much, they brought Bryce Young back in, and nothing else was to be expected. No matter how you approach this team, whether it is offense or defense, the Panthers are just not it, and they are going to continue not being it for years to come. This will not be a competition by any means. And I am confident enough that this is going to be the only shutout score for this week. Falcons take the win 34-0. Cincinnati Bengals and New York Giants. The Cincinnati Bengals are coming off of a devastating loss to the Baltimore Ravens at home. Statistically, this was one of Joe Burrow's best games. He threw for over 300 yards and 5 touchdown passes. The only drawback was one interception that was late in the fourth quarter that led to a field goal by the Ravens, which led to overtime, which also led to the loss. Jamar Chase had a dominant performance as well, with 193 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, and 10 receptions, so he's always open. The Giants are coming off of a win against the Seattle Seahawks and what was an absolute upset. For them, they had just a solid performance on both offense and defense. Nothing too fancy and nothing spectacular, but just enough. The moral of the story is that the Seahawks really just didn't show up, and the Giants took full advantage of that. And that is not slander, that is just the truth. Giants, you did a really good job last week. But in prime time, this is going to be rough for them. I don't sense an upset here. Despite the 1-4 start, I do think the Bengals are going to come around. Their offense is on all cylinders. What worries me is their defense. But with the Giants not having Malik Neighbors, which was their #1 target, I don't see them capitalizing as much. So in the Meadowlands on Sunday Night Football, I'm giving the win to the Bengals, and the Bengals will win this 27-10. Buffalo Bills and New York Jets. The Buffalo Bills are coming off of a 2-game losing streak, most recently to the Houston Texans, where they lost 23-20. In that game alone, however, they did not start off well. They were flat on defense as well as offense, and Josh Allen had one of his worst performances in his career, throwing for only 9 of 30. However, the Bills started to creep back up into the game, especially in the third quarter and fourth. Touchdowns by James Cook and Keon Coleman helped get the Bills back in the mix. But as mentioned before, due to a late drive by the Texans and a game-winning field goal, the Bills were left packing with a loss. Same could be said with the Jets, who are also on a 2-game losing streak, most recent to the Minnesota Vikings in London. Aaron Rodgers, the 6th time of his career that he has thrown for 3 interceptions in a single game. Not the best performance for him, nor the rest of the team. They too started coming back, but unfortunately the comeback was cut short due to an interception picked off by Stephon Gilmore, sealing the game for the Vikings and advancing them to 5-0. For the future of the Jets, many questions are raised now that they have fired head coach Robert Saleh, which is probably a big shock for everyone, including him. I had a feeling he was on the hot seat, but I didn't know it was going to be this quick. With this AFC East matchup, it might come down to the final possession, or it could be an absolute blowout. Or I can just be entirely wrong. With these teams, I just want to see a good game. I don't believe in the interim head coach boost for the Jets, so I'm going to give the win to the Bills, but I do think this will be not as high of a scoring game as you expect. Good offense for the Bills versus a great defense for the Jets. If the Jets offense can keep up with the Bills, it might be an exciting game, but I'm going to go with Bills 28, Jets 20. Whew, we got through all of that. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to my weekly NFL picks. I love to hear from your thoughts. So if you agree or disagree with any of my picks, please leave a comment below. And if you're enjoying these breakdowns, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Peace.